good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I mean, I think it's clear for all of us that business as usual is no longer an option. I finished my presentation yesterday with a quote by the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres. And then he said, we have a choice, collective action or collective suicide. So at the UNFCCC, or the UN Climate Change, we are promoting this idea, this concept of inclusive multilateralism. So if you expand multilateralism to all levels of society, to local communities, to business, to innovators, that's what we need, that's what we are talking about. And yeah, and now I want to share how I feel after this almost 2 days of summit. It's not over yet, but I feel so much energized. I had some amazing conversations. I've been part of some amazing discussions. And I think the hackathon is a central part of this event. And I think it's a good way of engaging with the community, and I was lucky enough to be invited to be part of this panel, so I got a first hand into looking into the ideas that were submitted to the hackathon. But broader than that, I think it's extremely important to bring these two communities together, the blockchain community, the sustainability community, or you can also say DeFi and regen. Yeah, I mean, I heard, for example, about crypto tomatoes. I heard, I also lunar punk. And so my last thing that I want to say is WAGMI. Thank you.
Okay, so I also want to introduce Wes from Hedera. And then you guys know Marc, so he'll come back around. So yes, I don't think you guys have actually met Motza. He is the man behind the scenes. So a round of applause for Motza. And he will actually talk about some of the judging criteria we had for Filecoin Green.
Yeah, I mean, who knows me? I mean, everybody who knows me knows that I really don't like being exposed in public, so this is like a hell for me. Yeah, but never mind, I just wanted to say, my name is Motza, and I'm from Filecoin Green. I mean, Orin, Marc, Alan, Kate, I mean, great team. And we are obviously committed, you know, to make the Filecoin network green. I mean, that's our name, but also our commitment. And luckily, this is something that we will actually achieve quite fast and quite soon. But the next thing actually to be done is even more important, and this is actually to make it sustainable year after year. So once we achieve this net zero, it's not just about achieving it, but also to sustain it. So being said that, that was exactly the main premise that we were actually building our hackathon statements and challenges around. So we actually wanted to give a set of tools, mechanisms, data to our hackathon participants so that they can actually build around this and make some kind of things which will make us able actually to promote storage providers who are somehow greener than others. I mean, they will be all green after all, but as to make some mechanism, at the moment, you know, the clients of Filecoin and the users of Filecoin can select storage providers, for example, by different reputation scores, like how, you know, how much data they store or seal, or how reliable they are. But basically, we do not have a mechanism at the moment to enable our clients and users to select the storage providers by how green they are. And this was exactly that we wanted to actually achieve with this hackathon. And I have to say that we are lucky that we actually have this kind of solutions submitted and projects that are actually building exactly around this data and point. So that would be it for a first round, and then I'll continue later.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah, I'll get next. Yes, same. I also wanted to introduce you to some of our hackathon judges who couldn't be here today. Of course, you know Wes, Alex, and Motza, who are on stage, and Marc, who presented. Yeah, Marc making his way up on stage. But we. But we also had Chainlink sponsored, and we had Ali from 50 Years and Bernhard from Fluence, who helped sponsor the event. And I will now announce the Filecoin Green winners. We are giving prizes to the top 3 finalists, and then we also had some runner-ups. So our runner-ups include Carbon NFT, Green Chain, Blockmail, Drive Clean, New NVI, Earthriser, Green DAO, Greener, Sustain DAO, and NVFi. And then our top 3, our third place winner was Indoor Farming, which is an indoor vertical farm located in the heart of the Midwest, and they created their own fulfillment stack. And then our second place winner was Green Fill, and it is an easy-to-use dashboard that allows the Filecoin community to geographically identify green SPs. And then drum roll, our first place winner was EcoSoul, who we thought interacted with the team. He really understood what we were trying to do at Filecoin Green and some of the tools that we were focused on. And EcoSoul is a community hub for Filecoin storage providers to track their green reputation score so that they can be used to track their green, so they can track their green reputation score both on and off chain. And then next I will announce the Chainlink winners. They had 5 winners, and they will each get a prize of $1,000 each, and it was Sustain DAO, Mint Plant, Green DAO, Plant and Pillars, and Orchid. And then Wes will talk about the winner and why Hedera decided to get involved in the hackathon.
Yeah, absolutely. And Orin, thank you so much for all the work you and the team have done with this really awesome hackathon. So I think it was a really exciting opportunity for folks to better engage with both Filecoin and the other sponsors in a way that we are building solutions that are beneficial to communities for all of our ecosystems, and how we can bring all the different protocols and players in the space together to build a more sustainable future. And so with that, one of the things that we wanted to see out of this hackathon as the Hedera ecosystem, and really from the HBAR Foundation's Sustainable Impact Fund perspective, is looking at a solution that could continue to grow, and that solution could also provide a real world outcome, right? Looking at how we can better measure the green attributes from the different storage providers on Filecoin, but also use technologies like Hedera. And so in Hedera, we have a lot of different primitives, and we talked about some of them earlier today, on different offsets that are being created, different ways to measure carbon emissions that kind of build the supply and demand side of the markets that we see, and we've talked about a lot in the refi space. And the winner that we chose is EcoSoul. And part of the reason we're so excited about what EcoSoul is doing is they're looking towards a future where we can leverage both of the tool sets from Filecoin and Hedera, and they've created opportunities where you can offset some of those emissions or some of the energy usage with assets on Hedera, and enabling a future where we can also measure carbon emissions on Hedera and carbon emissions tokens. And one of the efforts that we really are excited about, as part of one of the efforts that I've been taking is working on standards for better carbon emissions accounting, and making sure it's fully auditable. And we're excited about the future of this project, where it's going to enable better auditability in the space, and also link back to the auditable offsets that are enabled on Hedera. And so as part of that, we can help make Filecoin a little bit greener with the work that you're already doing, which is, I think we can actually, look at a future together where we're going to be able to show this in a very easy to see, easy to understand visual way for folks to better understand, how their storage providers are green or maybe less so, and make good decisions based on that.
And we actually have EcoSoul here today. So he'll be doing a live demo of what we saw and what we think will be great for both the Filecoin Green team and Hedera team. So I will invite him to the stage and he can present his work.
Yeah.
Hey, can you hear me? Cool. So I'm just trying to test my clicker here. Sorry, it doesn't seem to be working. But anyway, maybe while that gets fixed, before I get started, I just want to say, huge thank you and huge shout out to the Filecoin Green team. I'm still kind of buzzed here. I was in New York a couple of days ago, and for the past 2-3 weeks, been hacking on this project, interacting with these folks as little avatars on Discord and Slack, and then to be able to now be here in the beautiful city of Paris to put friendly faces to the name. It's such a magical experience in sort of this digital world that we live in. So super excited to be here. Thank you so much for this opportunity and all that just happened. Super happy to be here. My clicker still seems to not be working. I don't know if I have to do something special, but is anyone here to help my laptop? I don't think that's a clicker. Okay. Yeah, okay. Maybe I'll just stay in front of my laptop and do this. Cool. Anyway.
The one yesterday just did the press release.
It's all good. Yeah, it's as raw as it could be. I'm just going to use the laptop, and we're just going to go with it. So yeah, the project that I built for the Sustainable Blockchain Hackathon was called EcoSoul. It's basically a community hub for Filecoin storage providers centered around a soul-bound community NFT that stores a green score on-chain that shows how green the storage provider is. So let me provide a bit of context on how this project came about and why I decided to build it. So one of the reasons why I decided to hack at this particular hackathon was sort of being inspired by the sort of practicality and the mission of Filecoin Green. Specifically, I want to share with you a sort of diagram that I found really enjoyable. It was sort of a cause and effect diagram shared by Juan. So basically, we all want to make the planet green, and to do so, we have to have green industries, especially an industry like crypto. But in order to have an industry like crypto be green, we need to have networks at the protocol layer be as green as possible, especially a protocol that's widely used like Filecoin. So in order to have a green Filecoin, you need to have green storage providers, which are the most energy-intensive layer of the entire stack. And so basically what this diagram did for me was take this environmental problem, a daunting, seemingly insurmountable problem, especially to an individual dev like myself, and boil it down to something tractable, such that you translate the question of how do you make the planet green to something as sort of simple as how do you actually incentivize Filecoin Green storage providers to be as green as possible? And this is sort of the driving problem statement that I wanted to try my hands on for this hackathon project. When it comes to encouraging people to do something, I think there's broadly two very effective strategies. First, and the most obvious, there are financial incentives. Basically, you subsidize people to do a certain action. And then there's a more interesting sort of status incentive. And you can imagine this sort of appeals to the more fundamental human motive of, imagine you construct a value hierarchy based on a particular metric, and by having that metric associated with the individuals, you want to sort of encourage them to sort of optimize for that metric, case in point being how green they are, such that they move further in that direction down that course. So because I'm not a crypto whale or anything, I don't have a ton of money to throw around, obviously I couldn't do the financial incentives, so I tried my hands on building the latter. Basically a community honor system for Filecoin storage providers such that it's based on a clear metric of how green they are and sort of to be able to see how you fare as a storage provider in comparison to others in the network, and finally sort of provide a verified representation of that on chain. My project involved sort of three main components. First, I calculated a green reputation score to measure how green each storage provider was. Second, I designed a community NFT that stores that score on chain, and I'll talk about the implications of that in a bit. And finally, I deployed a little web app such that storage providers can come, claim the NFT, and then actually see a leaderboard of how their scores compare to others. I'm going to quickly touch on sort of how I went about the score calculation process because I put a lot of thought into it. So why a green reputation score? Ultimately, the goal of this was wanting to have sort of a very simple, concise metric, something literally a number between 0 and 10 that represented how green each storage provider's operations were. And by doing so at a glance on a snapshot, you'll be able to compare if storage provider A was more sustainable than storage provider B. And so that was the goal of it. What it boiled down to was 3 different subscores. And the ingredients that I'm about to explain are those 3. First was something called the renewable energy ratio score. The second was an accounting granularity score. And finally, there was the grid carbon intensity score. And I'm going to quickly go through one by one, explaining what those are and how I went about calculating them. So first, the renewable energy ratio score. This basically answers the question of, in the history of your operation as a storage provider, what percentage of the energy that you spent actually came from renewable sources? And sort of how I went about calculating that is taking the total renewable energy from the RECs that and when I say REC, a renewable energy certificate that the storage provider purchased, whether it's delivered or yet to be delivered, I divided that by the total cumulative energy of the miner's operation in its history and came up with a little ratio score. Now, why this is important, obviously we want to know whether a miner has positive emissions, 0 emissions, hopefully negative emissions, and this is sort of a direct measurement of that through a ratio. And obviously I used some endpoints provided by the Filecoin Green team that were super useful for this calculation, and I came up with a score between 0 and theoretically infinity. Why it was infinity is because, and this part of the issue here, was because I found certain storage providers that were providing very little storage to 0 storage on the network, but for some reason in good faith purchasing RECs, which made the ratio skewed to hundreds, which caused an issue here. So how I tried to go about mitigating this issue that was penalizing large storage providers was basically, and this is room for interpretation here on the ideal methodology, I basically said, if you're a storage provider with 0 emissions, you're going to get a score of 9 out of 10. And I might have to go edit that after hearing from the summit how 0 is not 0, but for now we'll just go with it. And if the score didn't reach 1, I just linearly scaled that from 0 to 9. And then furthermore, if you actually had a score above 1, meaning you have negative emissions, I took that score and logarithmically scaled it such that you have diminishing returns as the score goes higher and higher, such that we don't heavily skew towards providing too much incentive towards small storage providers. So basically a diagram of that kind of very simplistic math looks like this here. Finally, you have a score between 0 and 10 representing sort of how much of your consumed energy was renewable via the sort of renewable certificates that you purchased. So that was the first score. And then quickly, the second score, the accounting granularity score, kind of trying to answer the question of how closely does the renewable energy you've purchased match the ones you've actually consumed. And this is important because from the Scope 2 guidance, basically ideal world, RECs should be issued and redeemed as close as possible to the period and the location of the electricity consumption. And this sort of informs one of the objectives of Filecoin Green sort of phase 2, which is like you want to have shorter accounting periods. And the TLDR here, to sort of borrow Alan's analogy, is that like you don't want storage providers to buy one REC at the end of the year to try to offset all of their consumption throughout the year. You want to have them snack RECs throughout in regular time periods, whether that's like quarterly, monthly, which I believe is like the shortest period we have offered right now, to even weekly, ideally daily, hourly, to closely match your renewable energy to the actual consumption time. For better accounting. And how I went about quickly calculating that was just, find all the accounting periods based on the RECs purchase. You have an end time, start time, take those times, and then you quickly rate them. How I weight them and how I weighted them was try to reward shorter periods. And I did this based on some exponential function, but TLDR is like, if the accounting period is like a year, then you have like 0.3. If the accounting period is like a month, you reward it like 0.6. And then you take the weighted sum of that, and finally you normalize it between 0 and 10, and you get sort of a final value representing how granularly you've been accounting. So that's score 2. And finally, you have the grid carbon intensity score, which, pretty straightforward. What's the marginal emissions rate at which your power grid operates? Obviously purchasing offsets is awesome, but if we can exhaust all the options so we can actually reduce carbon emissions from the first place by incentivizing miners to move to grids that actually have lower emissions rates, if not a carbon-free grid, that would be the ideal scenario. So that's why we added this score here. It just came from an API called the WattTime API, which we fed in the miner location. And again, we took that score, inverted it such that we reward those with lower rates, such that those are higher scores. And finally, we took all those values. Long story short, to sum it all up, I weighted these scores as a sum based on the ways that I found sort of, what were the most significant parts of, the 3 scores, and also like how valuable or quality the data was, because some of the data sources weren't quite, up to par. And I just found these weights, for the 3 different scores, and I added them up at a weighted score to have the screen reputation score. So probably shouldn't have gone that in depth, but like that was a score that I calculated. And the question is like, okay, you calculated this score for every storage provider to show and indicate how green they are based on the constraint data that you had. What's the point of that? And basically, my project was kind of trying to experiment the various ways you can actually use this score to do some interesting things. And so how I'm going to demonstrate that is with a live demo. And maybe I should say I'm going to risk doing a live demo right now. And maybe at the back you could prepare some elevator music just in case something goes wrong. But yeah, I basically have like here, my deployed website. It's called ecosol.xyz, very Web3. And miner can come here, connect a wallet or claim NFT or see the leaderboard. We'll come to claim NFT in 1 second, but let's start with the leaderboard. So basically, if you go to leaderboard, you have a list of all the miners in the network, about like 1,900 of them. And basically, currently, by default, it's rated, on the overall score in real time. So for instance, this miner F01234 has this really high score and is up on the leaderboard. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's some association with miner F01234 and the Filecoin green team. So like, I think it makes sense. But like, if you're like skeptical, you can like click into this link actually, and it'll lead you into the Zero Labs website. So you can actually closely see like, okay, is F01234 actually like purchasing Rex? And it seems like based on this data, very short accounting periods, a lot of Rex purchase, so solid, like you can trust that. And basically you can come back and kind of also sort this leaderboard based on the different metrics I just described, maybe the renewable energy ratio or the accounting score. And also, which I think is pretty cool, you can also filter by region. So maybe I just want to know, where in, Southwest, maybe South Carolina this is, like, what are the most green storage providers in that region? So we have this like kind of cool interactive leaderboard where you can actually see like, in what region, based on what metric, which storage providers in their network are like most green. Now, that's the leaderboard. I then want to touch on sort of the punchline of this project, which was sort of the community NFT. And so imagine you're a storage provider, and you come to this network, and then you can come in and connect the wallet. We're about to go on-chain, so get ready. So yeah, and then you can come to this claim NFT screen. And so first it's going to say, I don't know, your wallet is not associated with the storage provider ID, so please provide the ID that you can verify. So maybe I'm a storage provider, and I'm like, my storage ID is F09696. If y'all can remember that, 9696. And then I can just verify the identity. It's quickly just signing a message with the worker address associated with my storage provider ID. For the sake of the demo, I disabled it, so I'm quickly just going to say, imagine this is like a demo signature, and then I'm going to verify my identity. Assume that went through, you're going to see a claim your NFT screen. So quickly I'm going to call this function that's associated with the NFT smart contract and be able to actually confirm this transaction. And so amazing, it's been confirmed. It's going to give you a little link to the transaction that actually went through. And this is the part where we play the elevator music, because we're going to be hoping that the Rinkeby testnet, which will apparently like soon be deprecated, actually works in our favor. So I don't know if you have something going on, like we can play it. Apparently it's indexing, so it means I think it went through. So we're going to take a minute to kind of hope that it goes through. Right now, basically, I'm a storage provider. I verified that I'm this storage provider and claimed this NFT. And we're just waiting on Etherscan to help me out here, because I'm starting to sweat. Oh my God, success. It happened. My NFT has been minted. Thank you very much. Token ID is this, so you can actually see that this NFT has been minted to my account. Oh my God, that's awesome, but I really want to see it. So I'm going to go to OpenSea based on my account, and boom, I see this NFT. Whoa. Here we have the actual community NFT. It's a little cute little visualization of all the metrics. Right now there's a default profile picture here, but ideally you want to make that editable. But you can see like this is my storage provider ID, 9696. You have the region that I was in. Here's my rank out of all the storage providers. Here's my green score. And below you have all the metrics of this particular scores that we talked about, in detail. They're even stored as attributes on the JSON associated with the NFT so that it's not like embedded in the image. You can actually pull it and use it when you want. So that's sort of the NFT. And you even have this gold tier, which I created like a little tier system, like silver, gold, platinum. And this is like gold tier, which is like top 150 miners that are most green. So you have this little thing you can share. Claim your NFT, like share it with your family, friends, show it off. You have this little like emblem, basically on-chain credential here. So that's basically like the community NFT aspect of this that holds all your credentials on-chain. So I'm probably going to wrap up about sort of the implications of that and how I sort of went about doing this. And first question is like, what part of the project involved IPFS and Filecoin? Well, all the NFT metadata you saw was generated programmatically, the PNGs, and then stored on IPFS using this SDK called Pinata. And then the web app you just saw was also on IPFS using the service called Fleek, very convenient. And finally, like all the metrics you saw was from the Filecoin Green API, calculated for the storage providers in the network. So it was kind of an experiment of how do you use like all these tools in the Filecoin ecosystem for the Filecoin ecosystem to like help the underlying sustainability metric of it. So I thought that was pretty cool. Where we could go from here, I'd love to sort of improve on this score so we can continue to build on it. Obviously, there's a lot of like hand-wavy math that I did because I'm not, my expertise is not in that domain. So hopefully we can get some help from folks and like improve it and maybe like legitimatize it to the point where we actually include this score in the existing Filecoin reputation system, such that when people who want to store data actually come and look at the Filecoin reputation system, they can be like sort by how green they are, and I want to just store my data with the greenest storage providers, providing further financial incentive for the storage providers to actually be as sustainable as possible. And finally, if we actually make this community NFT a thing, you want to store and all these scores on chain, you can actually have some sort of like proof of sustainability on chain for every storage provider. And quickly, I think there's a lot of potentials to that because once you have stored these scores on chain, it's not just a part of this project. It's on the public domain. Anyone can fetch it and use it. So maybe you have all these other green projects that for instance, a sustainability DAO, we want to start this project. We want to get like, Filecoin involved. They can just go to the contract, fetch it on whatever, chain it's on, and then look through like who are the top 100 miners, extend them an invitation to join the DAO, especially if they're individuals. Similarly, you're starting a green protocol with a particular token. I want some early users. I can just look through, who are the top X miners, and then reward them with an airdrop, get some early buy-in, and start your project. And finally, you can actually, have useful on-chain insights using analytics tools to actually just like crowdsource sort of useful insight calculation from the scores that actually live on chain. So a lot of sort of openness there. And finally, I think if we take a step back from EcoSoul, in general, you can just sort of use this NFT to legitimize actors in some sort of network. Particularly interesting would be sort of incentive-driven ESG networks. And I'm going to go through like a very quick use case of that regarding the Guardian and Hedera network. And so imagine you could sort of provide on-chain, proof of legitimacy on a solution like Guardian. For instance, like you have sort of, a real-time updating NFT, just like EcoSoul, that works as verified credentials for actors in a market that sells and trades like carbon offsets and REX. So basically, this will be like an improved identity management user experience. So imagine more concretely, I'm a carbon credit buyer and I want to purchase like high-quality offsets for my project. Then the current setup of Guardian, to my understanding, is that every ESG asset token has sort of a verifiable link for the buyers to go in and check the verified methodology and the history of the asset. But imagine we had a more simple sort of summarization of the legitimacy of every asset issuer to provide just a better experience for buyers and see those stats on-chain on the network built on top of Guardian. So I think that's a very interesting use case that I'm excited to explore after this. And yeah, so finally, rooms for improvement, a lot of hand-wavy math here. We probably want to weight this ratio better by the storage capacity delivered on each miner, and sort of, use more rigorous math than like if it's 1, it's 9, and like arbitrary mathematical calculations there. Accounting granularity-wise, this is a little bit more of a feedback on like the industry in general. If we had shorter accounting periods, we can more closely match purchased renewable energy to the consumed. So we'll be able to just have, as the scope to guidance said, closer location and time-wise options for storage providers to source their renewable energy certificates and therefore have better accounting, which is really ideal for the industry as a whole. Finally, the grid carbon intensity score. If just, there were some better emissions rates data sources. For instance, the API that I used did not include like Asia, and Asia is like a huge part of where the storage providers are located. We'd be able to have more quality data, and right now I just took like the average and kind of filled them in, backfilled them in. So I think TLDR is like better data sources, more mathematically rigorous aggregation of scores would make this project better. That's pretty much it. So thank you very much. That was quite a long presentation, but I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions for him before we, yes, okay.
Yeah. I'll give it a shot.
Dude, that was fire. I would hire you if I could. But I don't have any money to hire you with. So, next question is probably more a Filecoin thing, but curious to see that you're basically using Rex to demonstrate people are using renewable energy. Is there also an encouragement to basically commend storage providers which are actually using renewable energy at source? Because I feel like Rex are kind of disconnected from the source energy that's actually being provided for the for those folks. So that might be a Marc question.
Honestly, that might be a
Yeah, definitely happy to answer that. Very good point. In our green guidance documentation, which is at filecoingreen.gitbook.io, we have a whole slew of very, very detailed guidance, kind of identifying and defining best practices of what storage providers should do to decarbonize their operations. And in there you'll find probably too much information, because this is my jam, too much information on greenhouse gas accounting, a whole laundry list of ways in which you should seek to procure renewable energy, with on-site generation being the highest on the list, and then a whole slew of other metrics related to how we want them to report on their crucial operational metrics in order to make them move towards more sustainable futures. So 100% agree with you. On-site generation is the best way to mitigate emissions from electricity use, but there are often times when on-site generation is not a viable option. So there are other ways to do it, and one very good way to do it is this market instrument of Rex.
Just a second, that was a sick presentation, super lit. From the perspective of the NFTs and the score, like, you at some point will mint your rank and you'll be number whatever. What happens when that rank decreases or changes? How do you keep track of that? How do you incentivize people to like get to number one?
Yeah, that's a great point. Actually, it was like part of my initial roadmap. I just ran out of time. But like, yeah, basically, NFTs are just contracts that live on the chain, and you can have ways to update that metadata. And basically, what I was planning to implement was basically a cron job that runs. You can set it to every day, every week, every month, whenever the API maybe updates, such that the NFT gets freshly updated in real time, and such that there is incentive to move upwards in the rank, and make sure you don't fall off the ranks, things like that. Thanks for pointing that out.
Quick question. Oh, what was your URL for the app? And do you have a Twitter account we can follow along your work? And to the point of the other gentleman, we do have the money to hire you if you want. Looking for a job.
Thank you. Yeah, the URL was ecosoul.xyz. Tribute to eco soulbound token maybe. And yeah, there's no Twitter handle yet because I'm just like just finished this and we'll see if it warrants that. But what's up? Follow me. You can, find me at, I am Minci. It's I am MINCI at Twitter. I don't post much yet, but maybe starting this, I'll start posting more. But yeah.
And I have first dibs on the job offers, okay?
Awesome presentation. So glad you're pushing forward also all this, and you showed Zero Labs proofs. That's so good.
Yeah,
what would you do if you could program renewable energy? Did you have any other ideas or stuff like that? Or also challenges of what you did here? So it's two different questions, I understand. First, challenges. What did you find difficult in developing with all these tools? And maybe later, what would you like to do also after? What would your brainstorming was at the beginning for other ideas?
Yeah, I'll first tackle the challenges. I mean, there were a lot of challenges both in the sourcing of the data, because a lot of the APIs were from sort of disparate places, and they all had sort of different shapes and forms, and trying to find where do I get the right input for the next API from the first API and things like that, and creating sort of a pipeline for that. And also just like, this kind of limited expertise on my part, like how to actually like rigorously take that data and like normalize it in a way where you don't like lose data in the middle. So when you're summarizing things, you tend to like kind of overweight things and skew the metrics one thing over another. So I think there's still a lot of improvement to be there, but I think those were like the broadest challenges, kind of utilizing the APIs and also finding the ones that actually, in fact, I just learned about like the UN has more data sets on like Asia and stuff regarding kind of local power grids, and probably I could leverage that to make it better in terms of like coverage over other regions. So like, yeah, better data sourcing, better sort of data manipulation, and also kind of better pipelining of the data. I don't know, yeah, next steps, a lot of what I just said, and hopefully, I think it's like based on what Filecoin Green wants to do with this project and whatnot, and happy to sort of improve that and kind of legitimatize it. But yeah, I don't really have other than that like clear steps. I don't know if that answered your question, some of that, but
It's fine. Thank you very much, and congrats again.
thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to third that notion that your presentation was bussin'. It was very good.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask, so right now the NFT is on the Ring-B Ethereum network. What are your plans for when this does go to launch, choosing the right blockchain to have that NFT on?
Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, like, just to put context, like, 2-week project, and I was just familiar with the Ethereum ecosystem, so it's just like, okay, like, let's shove the wallet in that I know with the right, like, kits and stuff. So not a lot of honest, due diligence in my part. I fell kind of short there, so I guess I used kind of one of the most energy-intensive ones out there. Ideally, it's leveraging, doing a little more research on my part, but also leveraging, clearly more green networks like, Hedera, one of the most green ones out there that actually is shooting for carbon negative sort of chain as a whole. Yeah, and just kind of, I don't have the clear answer. I'm definitely gonna probably work with Hedera to see like what next steps are. But like, yeah, and I know like also Filecoin's coming out with like the FEM stuff and whatnot. So there's a lot of like optionality out there definitely for more ideal solutions. So yeah, I guess I just want to like say that wasn't the ideal, and I admit that. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.